Hey YouTube Kimanya, I am Sha.
And I'm Ju. Together we are
Sha and Ju. Welcome back to our channel. So today we'll be making Schrippe. Schrippe is a German bun. And we will be using that same recipe to make a sourdough. So for this one, you will be needing a starter, which is here, the Schrippe that we're making right now, and the sourdough that will be coming up soon.
Back home, bread is of course a huge institution and part of our culture. And Schrippe is actually a Berlin slang word for the little white buns we're going to be making today that you would typically eat on a nice Sunday breakfast with a family.
It's a very simple and easy recipe. It has all-purpose flour, yeast, salt, sugar, and water, and the starter obviously.
So pretty easy to make. We just wanted to make sure before we get into this video that you liked it. If you are enjoying yourself today, subscribe to the channel, of course, if you haven't already, and turn the notifications on so you're not missing out on that sourdough, because we know a lot of you have been asking us for the recipe, so stay tuned for that. Also, we just wanted to mention, if you haven't seen it in our past videos, that we're always linking you the recipe in the description box below so that you can then go back into the video and take all the measurements to recreate the dish at home for yourself as well. So
let's get into it.
Yo me llamo Tarzán y la gente me dice ¿cómo es? El rey de la selva. Jane es perfecta gracias a sus raíces. ¿Sabes cómo es? El rey de la selva. Ando con mis leones cazando los ciervos. ¿Cómo es? El rey de la selva. Yo soy de fiesta de leones a cerdo. ¿Cómo es? El rey de la selva.
It's my turn today. Welcome to the first episode of Cooking with Ju. As mentioned, we'll be making Schrippe today, the German bun. And after mixing the dough, we will be separating half of the recipe to make the sourdough tomorrow. I'm very excited for this. Bear with me as it's my first time. We'll of course be having Sha as usual with us. He's behind the camera today, so he'll be assisting with tips and tricks as well. So let's get started. So for today's recipe, we will be of course needing the bread starter that we prepared yesterday and left out on the counter. It smells already really nicely fermented, so that's definitely the star ingredient. We will additionally be needing 1 kilogram of all-purpose flour, 600 milliliters of water, 20 grams of dry active yeast, 10 grams of salt, and 20 grams of brown sugar. We normally prefer using brown sugar, but you can also use white sugar instead. As the first step, you can see I've already put the bowl onto our mixer here. You can, of course, if you don't have a mixer like that, use your hands as well. It's just to facilitate the process for us, and we're using the hook attachment here today. So, of course, the bread starter is already in the bowl. Now I'm going to add in all the water. We're also going to be adding all of the yeast and all of our brown sugar. And then we're going to turn on the mixer on its lowest setting, just until all the ingredients have incorporated. Perfect. Once everything has been mixed initially now, we're going to be adding our flour. Just make sure that you keep normally around just a spoonful aside so that we can then use that to dust our buns later on, as well as the workstation for Schrippe, as well as the sourdough. Perfect. So this is what I'm going to keep aside. And then now we're going to be mixing everything together for 5 minutes on the lowest setting. Timekeeper, will you do us the honor? The first round of mixing is complete. We're now going to let the dough rest for 5 minutes to make sure that the gluten can develop. Timekeeper.
There you go, 5 minutes.
We'll see you in a little bit.
Ju, time is up.
So now we are just going to let our mixer mix the dough for another 5 minutes on the lowest setting again. Timekeeper, thank you.
Ju, time is up.
We are just going to be repeating the same process and letting the dough rest for another 5 minutes. If at any point you end up using the mixer and notice that the dough kind of climbs up the hook, you can certainly, just like I just did, move it down a little bit with a spatula just to make sure the dough stays compact and all together. So now we're going to let it rest for another 5 minutes as mentioned. Timekeeper. Thank you.
Ju, time is up.
Time is up. Now, as you can see, I left the hook out. It's actually already really nice and stretchy, the dough. That's a good sign. That's exactly what we want. Before we start mixing for the last time, we will now be adding our salt in just to make sure that our bread tastes like something as well. Before we start mixing again, we just want to make sure we're pushing all the dough that you can see here on the sides of the bowl down to make sure all the dough actually will mix properly together. So we actually use a little scrapey tool like that. See, really stretchy. It's a good sign. And we're going to now turn the mixer on the lowest setting for the final 5 minutes.
There you go.
Timekeeper, thank you.
Ju, time is up.
Time is up! So all of our dough is now nicely mixed together. We are going to be removing it from the bowl, preparing our workstation to then work on the dough further. So this is what our dough now looks like. I'm already getting hungry. Sha, how do you think I'm doing so far?
So far so good. I've never seen Schrippe, so we'll see at the end what it looks like.
Perfect. So we are starting with dusting our workstation. I use a little strainer like that to do so. Just to make sure the dough doesn't stick to the work surface. And we're going to be removing it now from the bowl, again with our favorite scrapey tool. So bear with me, it normally looks a little bit more elegant when Sha does it. So again, little stretch test here. Just gonna scrape the little bit that's left in the bowl and add it to the dough. So the next step that's going to happen is for us to let the dough proof. Sha, would you mind explaining what proofing means?
It's just to let the dough rise, let the yeast work a little. What do you think it was for, Ju?
Yes, to make it as fluffy as possible, right? That's what we always want to achieve with a bread. So for that, we will be again just dusting it a little bit with flour. Once our dough is nicely covered in flour, I'm now going to separate it in two because remember, tomorrow we're going to be making the sourdough recipe. So I'm just going to cut it straight in the middle and I'm going to put half back into our mixing bowl and we're going to be putting it again overnight into the fridge. Just for it to become a little bit more sour. Of course, sourdough, right? Now, the other half we are going to be covering with a wet cloth as you can see, a beautiful Berlin cloth imported just for the Schrippe recipe. We're going to be covering it and we're going to be waiting for 35 minutes for it to proof. Timekeeper?
There we go.
Thank you. So this is our lovely sourdough now, which we will be putting into the fridge overnight, and then we'll be forming those buns tomorrow. So we're just going to be covering it with a plastic wrap to keep it fresh, right? And time is up. We are now going to take a look what our bread dough looks like. So it's stuck a little bit to the cloth here. As you can see, super stretchy, a lot of air bubbles. That's exactly what we're looking for. I'm just gonna separate it from the cloth. And we are going to give the bread its first punch. That pretty much means we're going to be folding it to enhance the flavor of the bread. So we're gonna start from moving it. I'm gonna actually put a little bit more flour so that it's easier to work with. You're gonna fold the back part to the middle, the front part also to the middle, and the sides in as well, like you would form a pocket. And then you can turn it around. What we're going to do, we're going to just let it proof for another 35 minutes. So again, we'll be dusting it. And we're going to cover it again with our wet Berlin cloth. And 35 minutes. All right, so after our second proof now, let's see what our dough looks like. Wow. Sha, what do you think?
I don't know, you tell me, how does it feel?
Airy, soft.
Good sign.
That's a good sign. So what we're going to do now, we are going to separate the dough in 80-gram portions to make sure that all the balls have an even size to then bake evenly in the oven in the end. So I have a kitchen scale here and we are metric people, so we're going to go with gram today. So again, just loosening up the dough a little bit from the work surface, and I'm going to be using the scrapey tool again just to measure little balls. So perfect. And then, not to forget, I'll just flour the rest of the workstation here as well, just so they don't stick. So now here we are, 8 evenly distributed pieces of dough that we are now going to shape Schrippe style. It's my first time, so let's do this together. So you're going to take the ball of dough and you're gonna pretty much follow the same principle as earlier. You're going to fold from the top to the middle, from the bottom to the middle, from the sides inwards as well. And then you're kind of like going to roll it lengthwise a little. Try to roll it really tight. And then what you can do as well, you can pinch the ends just like that. All right, what do you think? I'm pretty happy with the shape as is. I'm now going to transfer them over onto the baking sheet that I've already lightly dusted with more flour. Make sure that you leave a little bit of space in between, as of course the buns will proof one more time before they go into the oven, and then of course as they bake as well. So once the baking sheet and the buns on it, of course, are lightly dusted with more flour, we are now letting it proof, and they will be just covered with our famous Berlin cloth once more, and for 15 minutes.
Ju, time is up.
All right, let's see how the buns are looking. They're really liking the cloth today. So we are now going to make sure that they are receiving their design before we proof them one last time. So for the Schrippe, generally it has a lengthwise slit on it, which I'm going to create with the scissors just to make it a little bit easier. Normally when making bread or baking buns, you can go with any design that you would prefer. I'm just really going with a traditional Schrippe design today. So we are going to cover the buns one last time. And as this is now the last step before the baking process, we are going to preheat the oven at 415 degrees Fahrenheit. Also make sure that you are already preparing a small pot of water that we will be putting in the bottom of the oven just to add some humidity during the baking process. It is finally baking time. Very exciting. Let's take a look what our buns look like. Oh wow, they've actually proofed quite a bit more than I was expecting. Again, it's a good thing. But as you can see, the tray is just a little bit crowded now. So what I'm actually gonna do, I'm going to prepare a second baking tray just to be sure they don't get attached to each other during the baking process. And just before they go into the oven now, we're just going to be generously spraying them with water. This will just ensure that the crust will be extra crunchy. And then now, as our oven is already preheated at 415 degrees Fahrenheit, and our pot is already in the oven, which I'll show you in a moment, the trays can now go in. So as you can see, this is the pot of water, which is already inside. And we are now going to bake this for an initial 15 minutes until we check on it. Time is up. Let's check on the buns. So you'll see that the tray on the top is already nice and brown, but on the bottom it's not quite cooked yet. So what we are going to do is we're going to be flipping the trays up and down and back and front. As you can see, those ones are still quite pale, just to make sure that they evenly cook. We will then now put them in the oven for approximately another 15 minutes, but we'll check on them before just to make sure that they don't burn. Okay, let's check on them. All right. What do you think, Sha?
They look good. I've never seen a Schrippe before, but I assume next time I see one, I will know what it is.
So we are just going to transfer them over to the cooling rack now, just to make sure that they can air out a little from the bottom as well. Ta-da! They are ready. I have to say, just by looking at them, I'm quite happy with the result. Again, it's my first time making Schrippe. Normally I'm not in front of the camera, but it was a really fun excursion to switch turns today. So thank you, Sha, for doing that.
You're welcome.
So now let's see what they look like inside, and of course see what they smell and taste like, the most important part. So just to give you an idea, that's what they look like. They're quite nicely browned. You can hear them being really crunchy. So and on the inside, As you can see, really nice and fluffy
Really
and
nice.
really airy.
Yeah,
Sha, no?
it smells really nice. It looks really good. Can I have a piece?
Yes, try one. And I'll try one too. Cheers.
Is that Schrippe?
Yes, I would say so. Too bad today is not Sunday, and it's definitely not breakfast time, but you can always have a good little bun of Schrippe. What do you think, Sha?
Tastes really good. It's not that bad actually. Yeah, I'm
Not
impressed.
that
Yeah.
So again, thank you so much for watching our video. I'm really excited you shared me cooking today instead of Sha. Until next time, thank you so much for watching. Don't forget, of course, to like the video, subscribe, and turn the notifications on. See you next time. Cheers!
Bye.
Let's go to work, 'cause I'm tripping. Gotta work on myself, 'cause I'm falling apart. Please wake me up, 'cause I'm slipping.